And I would say then, at this point, maybe to fill that hole or to release some of that tension, you start going down a path that's not a good path for you to be going down in life.
Yeah. So when I was also 15, I met someone that lived a few miles away from us who was, I think he was in his 30s. He was an Indian guy, and he rode around the mountains on his horse as well. And it was, I developed a relationship with him. And, you know, he was not the kind of person that you would want your 15-year-old to be dating. But to me, it was just this romantic thing, and it was this escape. It was something different. It was someone that paid attention to me in a time when I was really struggling with my home life and who I was. I think the molestation abuse stuff got harder for me as a teenager, even though it wasn't actively happening anymore, really, physically, it was messing with my mind a lot more because I understood it better. And so I started dating this guy who, was a distraction to me from that. And, in the way 15-year-olds will, I just became madly in love with him. And, you can make your own conclusions about a 30-something-year-old man dating a 15-year-old. I certainly feel a lot different about it now than I did then. He told me that he wanted to marry me. Like, it was very serious in my mind. And then one morning I was riding away from home down this dirt road, and I remember a neighbor rancher pulled up alongside me and asked me if I'd heard what happened. And he told me that this man that I was in love with had been shot and killed.
What was the genesis of him being shot and killed?
It was, like I said, he wasn't the most upstanding person, and it had to do with marijuana and guns, and it was just a mess, and it was
some kind
tragic.
of a drug scenario.
Yeah, he wasn't a drug addict, but he led a life of, well, I'll just say it. He would steal people's marijuana plants from them and sell them. And it got him into trouble.
Yeah.
And I look back now on the road that relationship could have taken me down, and while it was this horribly tragic event for me at the time that sent me into an even deeper tailspin, now as an adult, the way I am, I'm almost thankful that it happened, because I think that had that not happened, who knows where my life would have gone.
And so what, there's first of all, I can see how 15-year-old Iris, who's dealing with this stuff at home and meets this guy that's, 31, and 31-year-old is, I don't care if he's a total idiot, he can manipulate the hell out of a 15-year-old all day long.
Yeah.
But regardless, you're in just a super vulnerable situation because of your mindset, and you end up here, in this relationship with this guy. Now he gets murdered, and you go, you end up just going even worse at the time.
Yeah, that was a hard thing for my 15-year-old brain to process. And shortly thereafter, my parents separated, not in an amiable fashion. My sister went off to college, so I was especially on my own because she was, my rock. And I just really went into a cycle of depression and misery. And by the time I was 16, I was dating a 32-year-old cop, which again, I have very different feelings now on what a 32-year-old cop is doing dating a 16-year-old. But he was this safety zone for me in a big way. He was this, strong, brave person who wasn't going to let anything bad happen to me. And I really latched on to that when I was just trying to find something in life to hold on to. And that ended up being a long on and off again relationship, which definitely was not healthy for me. And at that point in time, I started self-mutilating. I started cutting and burning myself. I was definitely very depressed. And it was not something that I knew how to communicate to anyone. I just was sucked into misery and self-pity, really.
And when you start hurting yourself, is that, at that moment, is it just so much anger and frustration that it somehow feels good to feel that pain or inflict pain on yourself? Or is it more of a, hey, everyone, look here, I'm doing this to myself, maybe you should pay some attention to me and help me? Or is it a little bit of both, or is there something that I don't know and understand?
I would say it's definitely both. It's a funny thing, and it's hard to understand. It's sort of an addictive behavior. And, I've read about it some, and they say there's chemicals released in your brain and stuff when you feel physical pain that makes dulls the emotional pain and things like that. But it also, for me, I will absolutely say that, I think it was a cry for help. It was like somebody realize what, and as all teenagers do, you think that you're some rare exotic creature that's no one else has ever experienced anything you've gone through, and nothing anyone says to you matters because they don't know what they're talking about. But for me, a lot of it was a cry for attention, to have someone, and I got it. The thing is I got the attention. The cop that I was dating told my parents that I was doing this, and people kind of freaked out, and everybody thought that there was really something the matter with me, and I was really depressed. And I wouldn't, even though I was getting the attention and people were actually asking me, like, what's going on? Why are you doing this? I would not tell anybody. I just was shut off. And it's like I wanted the attention, but then I still wouldn't say what. And maybe part of it is that I didn't even know, but I think what we talked about before of the not wanting to make a scene. I was not going to make a scene. At this point, my abuser was pretty old, but he was still alive, and he was still in our lives. He's still, all the time. And people were asking me, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And I was not going to say.
I'm going back to your writing. By that time, I was already damaged by so many years of abuse, heartbreak, and death, painful and destructive relationships. My parents were divorced and angry. My sister had moved away. I was in a spiral of self-destruction and self-pity. I had taken to cutting and burning myself, scars that I still carry to this day to remind me of the way my life could have continued. And that's what you just talked about. And then at this point, you're 17 or 18 years old, and your abuser, who you just said was now an old guy, he dies. And I'm going to continue. I'm not sure exactly when I woke up, when I shut off the self-pity fountain and realized that I was strong and indestructible. Somewhere in my early 20s. My 20s was a slow rebuilding of my life the way I wanted it. I traveled, wandered, worked as a horse wrangler around the West, had relationships with men who were kind and decent, got married, got divorced, made friends, built up a reserve of strength, and found myself little by little.